Hey everyone! Today, we're talking about how the British got involved in southern Africa and what happened after that. It all started because British ships were always sailing around the Cape of Good Hope on their way to India. Back in the 1600s, the British East India Company had already set up trade posts in Madras, Bombay, and Calcutta. By the 1700s, trade was so busy that they even had their own navy to move goods and people between England and India. Meanwhile, in 1652, the Dutch East India Company built a trading post near what is now Cape Town. They wanted to expand inland, but local African tribes resisted. Jump ahead to 1792, and Europe was at war. The French Revolution led to France taking over the Netherlands. Since the Dutch were now under French control, the British saw a chance to take over Cape Town. They had the strongest navy in the world and needed a good stopping point on their way to India. In 1806, they captured Cape Town and kept it, even after Napoleon was finally defeated in 1815. Once the British were in charge, they started making changes. They wanted the colony to be more British, so they replaced Dutch with English as the official language. Anglican missionaries arrived and tried to convert the Boers, who were descendants of the Dutch settlers and followed the Dutch Reformed Church. These missionaries also fought against slavery, and because of their influence, slavery in South Africa was almost completely abolished before the entire British Empire banned it in 1833. But British rule wasn't easy. They constantly clashed with indigenous African tribes, and one of the biggest struggles was the Kaffir Wars against the Xhosa people. These wars were long and brutal. The British didn't want more responsibilities in the region, so they eventually allowed the Boers to have their own territories. Between 1852 and 1854, they officially recognized two Boer republics, the Orange Free State and the Transvaal Republic. This agreement, known as the Convention of Bloemfontein, created a temporary peace between them. In 1853, the British reorganized the Cape Colony's government, allowing it to have a local parliament under Queen Victoria. But they weren't done expanding. In 1877, Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli decided to annex the Boer-controlled Transvaal Republic. To manage this, he sent a new governor, Sir Henry Edward Bartle Frere. That same year, the final Kaffir War broke out in October. The British defeated the Xhosa, but Frere was still worried, this time about the Zulu kingdom, ruled by King Cetshwayo. Frere saw the Zulu kingdom as a huge threat. Their army of 50,000 warriors scared the British, so on January 11, 1879, British commander Lord Chelmsford led his troops into Zululand. But things went terribly wrong on January 22 at Isandlwana, when 20,000 Zulu warriors attacked the British camp. It was a disaster. Every single British soldier there was killed. A few months later, on March 28, 1879, the British barely avoided another disaster while fighting the Zulu at Lobane. London didn't want to look weak, so they quickly planned another invasion. On May 31st, Chelmsford led a second attack on Zululand, determined to fix his mistake. The final battle happened on July 4th, when the British stormed Cetshwayo's royal home at Ulundi, completely crushing the Zulu forces. Cetshwayo was captured on August 28, 1879, but Queen Victoria later stepped in and had him released in 1883. However, he didn't get to enjoy his freedom for long. On February 8, 1884, he mysteriously died, with rumors spreading that he had been poisoned. Even though the British had defeated the Zulu, South Africa was still far from peaceful. The Boers and the Transvaal weren't happy about being under British rule. They had lost their independence in 1877 when the British annexed their land, and by December 12, 1880, they decided to fight back. The Boers were expert shooters, had modern weapons, and used clever guerrilla tactics, catching the British off guard. The British Prime Minister at the time, William Gladstone, wasn't interested in expanding the empire through war, unlike his predecessor Benjamin Disraeli. So, instead of dragging out the fight, he agreed to make peace with the Boers. By August 8, 1881, the Transvaal Boers regained control of their capital, Pretoria. Meanwhile, another major discovery was drawing British interest: diamonds. In 1871, massive diamond deposits were found in the Cape Colony, attracting thousands of prospectors. One of the most successful was Cecil Rhodes. By 1881, he had founded the De Beers Diamond Company, which would eventually control the world's diamond trade. He kept expanding into new territories, helping Britain annex Bechuanaland, now modern-day Botswana, in 1885. His power grew so much that in 1890, he became the Prime Minister of the Cape Colony. Rhodes wasn't satisfied, though. He believed there were even more diamonds hidden in the Transvaal. In 1895, he planned a secret attack known as the Jameson Raid. His close ally, Leander Starr Jameson, led a group of raiders into the Transvaal Republic on December 29, 1895. The plan completely failed. Jameson and his men were quickly captured and handed over to the British for trial. The whole situation was a huge embarrassment, and in 1896, Rhodes was forced to resign as Cape Colony's Prime Minister. To the Boers, the Jameson Raid proved that the British would never stop trying to take their land. In 1897, the British government sent Alfred Milner, an imperialist who strongly believed in expanding the British Empire, to be the new High Commissioner of South Africa. He saw the Boers as the biggest obstacle to British rule. Back in Britain, Prime Minister Robert Cecil, Lord Salisbury, agreed with Milner's vision. While negotiations dragged on, both sides prepared for war. The British sent reinforcements, and in response, the Boer leader Paul Kruger decided to act first. On October 11, 1899, he gave Britain an ultimatum: withdraw their forces or face war. When the British refused, the fighting began. Kruger's forces moved quickly. He had 88,000 men, while the British only had 20,000 in South Africa. The Boers launched attacks into the Cape Colony and Natal Province, overwhelming the British. But Kruger underestimated the sheer size of the British Empire. By the end of the war, Britain would send an enormous 450,000 soldiers to fight in South Africa. At first, the British struggled. Their commander, General Sir Redvers Buller, suffered multiple defeats. His failures were so serious that, on January 10, 1900, General Frederick Slay Roberts was sent to replace him. Unlike Buller, Roberts took immediate action, leading the British to a series of victories between February and May. On June 2, Kruger was forced to flee Pretoria, and by June 5, the British had taken control of the city. The last major battle happened in August 1900, when Roberts and Buller defeated Boer General Louis Botha at Bergendal. With the main Boer army defeated, Roberts returned to Britain in December 1900, leaving Lord Kitchener in charge. But the war wasn't over. The Boers refused to surrender and switched to guerrilla warfare. Kitchener responded harshly. He ordered his soldiers to burn Boer homes, destroy crops, and kill livestock, cutting off supplies to the Boer fighters. He also introduced concentration camps, where Boer families were imprisoned in horrible conditions. Disease spread rapidly, killing around 28,000 Boers, including many women and children. Between 14,000 and 20,000 Africans also died in the camps. To put an end to the resistance, Kitchener built a massive network of fortified blockhouses to trap the Boer fighters. Then, on January 28, 1901, he launched relentless attacks to wear them down. After months of fighting, the Boers had no choice but to surrender. On May 31, 1902, the Treaty of Vereeniging was signed, officially ending the war. The British had won, but the Boers' determination to fight for their independence never faded. Just 2 months before the war ended, on March 26, 1902, Cecil Rhodes passed away. With him gone and the war over, South Africa was entering a new chapter, one where the battle for control was far from finished.